Hello, we're starting today with another talk as part of our Dubai Design Week curated talks program. This year we decided to have a central thematic for our talks program, whereby we program 5 talks that we think are very relevant to our theme this year. And the talks are going to have a hybrid format where some of them are going to be recorded on site. You will also notice a lot of footage from the actual design week because we wanted to give an aspect of a virtual tour of the design week for whoever is not being able to attend this year. And we also have virtual webinars where other panelists are joining from different cities around the world. Today's talk is going to discuss the different design methodologies and approaches that are used and could be applied in the realm of urban design, urban space, and city making in general, and what are the different approaches and possibilities for young designers that they can adopt in their work. To step out a little bit of the traditional way of design disciplines or the way we work on projects or the subjects that are being investigated by designers, because we believe that designers are agents of change and they have an actual big role in defining how life should be in the future. Today I will be joined by 3 different speakers. May is joining me here from the D3 block, the D3 park. We thought it was a good idea for us to be in this public space, especially that there are a lot of public interventions around this area where visitors and can actually use. And this is something that's going to be discussed with reflected with the different projects by our different guests today. I will start by introducing May. May is the co-founder of Ayed&Barber studio. May is an art curator, creative director, and social architect with a focus on human-centric design. May has more than 10 years of experience and has been creating exhibitions in Dubai, London, Budapest, and the Middle East. You hold an executive MBA from HEC Paris and major in luxury brand management from Paris, Shanghai, as well as a bachelor degrees in architect. We will also be joined by Nihal Halimeh. Nihal is a Palestinian architect and researcher from Lebanon. Nihal holds a bachelor degree in architecture and has co-founded the Sustainable Camps in Lebanon, an experimental prototyping program hosted in Lebanese informal settlements. This is a network of local designers and architects collaborating to develop low-cost and environmentally friendly solutions to the local infrastructures challenges in the context of carrying out necessary repairs and upgrades. Nihal joined Pragma architects who are based in Dubai in 2019 and is leading on their research department. Nihal will also introduce to us one of her projects and we will go in depth in discussing this project that is, I think, based in Sharjah. It focuses on some Sharjah neighborhoods. We are also joined by Ghalia. Ghalia al-Serkabi is a design professional, researcher, and design educator. Her research is focused on dedicated to the investigation of populist politics from the perspective of design and theory. Ghalia's now joining us from Berlin, where she is giving different workshops and teaching as well there. Ghalia co-founded with her partner Lauren Alexander the Foundland Collective, which we're gonna be focusing on today more. We are interested in hearing more about this collective. This collective's role is, it's an intersection between art and design, and it's based between Cairo and Amsterdam. Foundland's projects explore underrepresented political and historical narratives by working with archives via art, design, writing, educational formats, video making and storytelling, which is quite multidisciplinary collective, and it aims to critically reflect upon what it means to produce politically engaged work from position of non-Western artists working between Europe and the Middle East. I'm so happy that this is kind of like a regional kind of platform with everyone here who are joining us from different countries in the region. So after this very long introduction, I will start with May, and we will start discussing particularly the project that you proposed to us for Design Week, and it's a project that you are currently running, and it's the general themes around climate change and engaging designers and youth in trying to find solutions for a lot of the consequences that climate change has caused on, especially on underprivileged societies and countries. So can you please tell us about this project?
Sure. Thank you, Ghassan, for the introduction, and hello to all my fellow panelists around the world. It's a pleasure to be here. Essentially, a lot of our work, Ghassan and Ayed&Barber, especially in recent years, has been focusing on sustainability. So integrating design and sustainability in multidisciplinary work. And this initiative, what we have decided to do is kind of take a multi-stakeholder approach in order to tackle the issue of climate change using design as a currency or as a solution, essentially. So if it's very difficult kind of to talk about climate change as a global issue, because it's kind of an infinite conversation that touches upon many sectors, not only design, of course. So that's why we have identified a particular scenario, a particular context with its own specific conditions in order to use this as a case. So what we have done is basically we have created this initiative using or engaging the UAE youth around climate change and focusing particularly on floods. We all remember how the year 2020 started, needless to say, but from a climate change perspective, it started with the wildfires in Australia and, of course, the continuous floods in particularly in Southeast Asia. So we have decided to focus on Bangladesh, on the community living by the Pragma River. And why this particular site is because 20% of the area of Bangladesh by 2050 will be submerged by water. So we are talking about 50 million people. 50 million people, if you put this in figures, population of the UAE is around 9.5, 9.6 million. So this is more than 5 times that amount. And what we have decided to do is instead of taking a typical approach to aid or to support, we have opened up the platform to 3 UAE-based universities, Manipal University, American University of Sharjah, and UAE University, Jamaat al-Imarat. And we have collaborated with architecture students and integrated our project into their curriculum, where they have been challenged to design structures, essentially and possibly floating structures that are sustainable, that can be operated and managed by the local community in order for them to have a living. We're talking about a community whose main bread and butter is farming, so land is a main asset. And one of the main issues that we have faced, especially in researching this particular case, was the prevention of access to the youth there to education. So students were not able, young people were not able to go to schools because of the floods and the rising water levels. So we have currently started the project in September. It's ongoing until December, Jan. And this is where we are basically, and really using design as a medium to bridge the potential and the capacity of the UAE youth as designers, as problem solvers, all the way to an impacted area.
Okay, so before we talk more about the project, I'm interested to know how did you set up this collaboration with so it was your idea basically, and then you reached out to the different stakeholders and asked them to participate in this project? Or
essentially, actually, my partner, Murad bin Ayed, initiated this project within Ayed&Barber. And to make it impactful, especially with his background in strategy, it's always about kind of creating multiple stakeholders, each who can contribute with value according to their involvement, according to their expertise. So what we have built is essentially this kind of stakeholder map involving 2 nonprofit organizations, one in the UAE and one in Bangladesh, Shidwal organization, which directly is working with the local community there, and already launched I would say a prototype of a floating school, which is currently working but needs to be optimize. And we have 3 UAE universities, like I mentioned, and in addition to the nonprofit and to the UAE universities. And in order to make it more impactful, we have decided to build this panel of experts and an ecosystem around the project, which includes strategists, environmentalists, architects, in order to keep the dialogue alive and to continue to refine the designs and the work according to the particular context.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions here around the process of implementing the project. First of all, I'm interested in the research component. How did you, your different stakeholders, your panel of experts, the students, how did they actually do the research around this project? Because I'm guessing it's not, it's probably hard for them to go do field research in this context. How was the information gathered? How much the information is loyal to the actual local context over there, and it's not just some high-end research that's been done online, you know. So it's very important when we are trying to find solutions for a specific project, for it to be meaningful, contextual, and in collaboration with the actual people living this situation. So can you tell us more about this research component, and has the community been engaged in this process, in this part?
Sure. Actually, Ghassan, you touched upon a very important point, which is the challenge. I mean, already climate change is a challenge, which is kind of a very modest word to describe the whole threat, this global threat. But the challenge really was the lack of access. Because normally, and especially when we talk about design or urban in general, it's all about feeling and all about visiting and really living kind of the whole conditions that we normally map and study, etc., on field itself. So my partner and I have been involved in Southeast Asia because a lot of our work was focusing on turning sustainable supply chains, supply chains in design to green or to sustainable ones. However, with the UAE students, and unfortunately, obviously due to travel restrictions, this was not possible. Initially, when we started this back in late 2019, the idea was to organize this field trip. And because that was not possible, what we have decided to do is really to incorporate the local element, source of information there. So the brief, as much as we have been part of it, the original had come from our partners in Bangladesh, Shidwal, non-profit organization, which works essentially with the local communities. We have also documented from photos to videos to all and interviews as well with the people about their needs, and particularly focusing on the youth. So in this scenario, we're almost bridging a youth in the UAE to the youth in Bangladesh. One side which has already access to education and one that's kind of in the threat of not giving an education. Yeah. So this was kind of the research phase, and this is a continuous conversation that we're having because it's incredible how the change is incremental every single day, and that's why we have to constantly
and it's
adapt.
Definitely very important to engage the local communities in the work that we're catering to them, because we all know that this non-profit NGO type of approach of just coming from the West and going to underprivileged third world countries and trying to implement some strategies that have been conceived in closed offices do fail most of the time because they're not really contextual. They do not take a lot of the actual realities into account. So it's very interesting that you're working with local partners there that are providing you with actual insights on the reality of things in the project. The other thing that I'm also interested in approaching is the role of public government organizations in Bangladesh in this project, because at the end of the day, they need to also provide permissions. They need to be involved as well in implementing a lot of the findings of this project. Maybe how does this influence the policymaking in the country? How are they involved in this? Are they at all involved? Are there
actually, and ideally speaking, they will be involved in phase 2 of the project when we talk about implementation. So the implementation of the best solution, because essentially the whole thing has been created as a challenge, almost like as a competition, where we have 120 students designing, thinking, configuring what could be the ideal solution for this community. So in phase 2, ideally, and this is why we have built those partnerships with local partners in Bangladesh, is to facilitate the implementation of those solutions. We're talking about a very dense country, 150 million people. They have already a lot to deal with, and I think having that kind of external solution that is subtly and authentically, if I may say, integrated is, I think, can be quite well received.
Are local authorities easier to access in the different regions? There are probably local authorities like municipalities that could actually play a more effective and faster role in
indeed actually, and our partners, the non-profit organization, are already partners with the United Nations, for example. So they have played a part in shedding the light on this, I mean, beforehand, like in previous years, about this issue of in Bangladesh. And what we aim to do is basically use this as a starting point, almost like a prototype that we can apply to other areas impacted by floods. I mean, we're talking about Sudan, for example, which we heard of like a month ago or a few weeks ago. So this is a continuously growing problem in other parts of the world. However, we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So I've decided to start where we have already established certain partnerships, certain logistical and other kinds of support.
Okay, so we're gonna go back in the next chapter to discuss more about the involvement of architecture students and designers in the UAE in this, and how designers and students who are based here can actually have an impact on. I mean, we live in kind of a privileged society here, so we have designers, students maybe have more chance to support other underprivileged communities. So we'll get to that later. But I would like to now move to Nihal, and I would like also to hear from you about your project, the project that you started, which is based here in the UAE, and the research that you've done. What is the theory behind it? What's your goal, and what type of research have you been doing on that?
Thank you, Ghassan, and thank you everyone for making this happen. First, I would like to explain to you who's Pragma, as Pragma is a Dubai-based design studio that is operating between the realm or the fields of architecture, urbanism, and research. It was established in 2014 by the two architects, Ahmad Khadir and Abdullah Shamsi. So in 2019, we established a research division that focuses more on urban phenomena in the region of the MENA region. And these existing urban phenomena, we were interested in studying these spaces and understand and come up with components that can inspire us as designers to solve problems that we face in contracted projects, but also come up with scenarios that can upgrade these areas. So Ghubaiba urban regeneration, or that can come under the phenomena or the understanding of forecasting in the UAE, that is all around this the country. The existing urban fabric that has been built in the 1970s that kindly are in bad shape, or they're transforming these spaces into a bad condition, and leaving them and trying to build a new components and a new city somewhere else without looking at these places is not only a phenomena that is existing now here, but also in architecture. We all think that like we build something that's gonna stay till the end or forever, and we don't readapt, or we don't reuse these spaces. We look for new spaces, and we build more. So studying the urban regeneration of Al Ghubaiba specific area was based on adaptation of an improvement to kind of transform these places and amplify the qualities of social and formal characteristics that we could find there. So this was an urban topic that we kind of conducted at the first beginning, and we noticed a lot of very interesting characteristic like urban farming that was conducted by the people living there, and this urban farming that was placed in front of their houses in an undesigned and untouched public space. Like it was just a road that's made only of sand that is left like this, and the people kind of took the initiative and transformed these places into urban farming, and even playgrounds that they play cricket there, and you start seeing the social behavior, how it actually impact or put the impact on an untouched design space. So this study has been conducted through field site visits and talking to the people with interviews, trying to understand why are they living there, and seeing what are the needs of these places. And we found a lot like the location of those folk housing neighborhoods are a really potential and strategic location through the city, which people would love to live there and are actually can easily commute. But also we found the qualities of sustainable designs that are implemented by the people that we as architects are trying to achieve in a new modern communities and infrastructures. So basically it's an examining of an observation of specific sites that has an urban phenomena in this region, and try to extract as much components to actually build a new methodologies that can help designers and inspire designers into getting more close to a better lifestyle, a sustainable lifestyle, a better environment to everyone, through understanding the social behavior of each person living in each context. And by doing that, we have to look closer and look from a macro scale back and come up with ideas that kindly build by bottom up, and try to, as architects, we're good at visualizing. Like we put forth a kind of a scenario and we draw it. We can engage the people by showing them how this space can transform into a better environment or a better building or a better space. So we as architects, we feel the need to adapt these methodologies that we think they are right, and put them forward to engage the people and the social behavior of their needs, and put them together to come up with a scenario that will alone operate. Like it's not only we keep to maintain, and like it needs a lot of maintenance of space. I'm talking about space. Like we usually build a sidewalk or like a road that we as the government or like some entities that take care of these places. But imagine if you're building a foundation for people that can use and maintain themselves these spaces, and the whole environment becomes like an ecosystem that can keep on operating and adapting and evolving according to the people's needs. So
basically you're talking about how kind of reducing the impact of not the impact, but reducing the roles and the scope of what architects and developers do, because right now the way cities are, or the urban space is being developed in a way, I'm talking about from the scale of the project rather than the importance of the work of the architects. Right now it's the buildings are kind of conceived as if they can exist on in any different planet or in any different city. You know, we build buildings that could be placed in same in the suburbs of Madrid and in Berlin. You know, they all look alike. This type of kind of non-contextual the type of architecture that's detached from the social reality of the different communities. So I think this type of architecture focuses a lot on trying to understand how this specific context is and trying to meet it with new ideas. So
yes, and yeah, like I would tell you, Hassan, that it's very important to understand the geographical and the cultural aspect of each context. And by doing that, you're building a foundation for any strategy that you can implement in any discipline, in any department, in design, in business, in economy, like anything you need to implement in such a community. You need to understand the people, the audience, the target audience, and by doing that, you need to put yourself there and understand the context and understand the climate, understand the challenges, understand what do we have, what we don't have. Like COVID-19, for example, now, like we're all stuck at a place where it's like a house for you, and now it became like the all your working space, workstation, a house, a sleeping space. So the house that was supposed to be only a place where you sleep, now it's or you gather. Now it became like a space where you're living 24 hours and 48 hours out of your day. So the space quality and the space needs became different. And if the space was designed according to social behavior adaptation, then this smooth transition can be implemented.
And if more and more designers adopt this approach, at the end of the day, it will become the new norm. Okay,
yes,
thank you, Nihal.
Thank you.
I will now move to Ghalia. So Ghalia, we've met in Amman Design Week in 2019, and you had a project. You were displaying your research over there about a particular project. Can you tell us more about what is Foundland, and what's the goal of this type of collective, and what is your focus in terms of research, and what type of methodologies and approaches you adopt in your work?
Foundland is actually we are a duo. It's me and Lauren Alexander, is a South African designer and an artist, and we've been working together for 10 years now, which is a really long collaboration. We started after we finished our master's study in 2010, and it's a kind of a new approach on design. So we use design research to inform the public about maybe deeper stories, or like create alternative narratives about specific topics. We are interested in migration, image production in conflict times, coming from conflict zones. As you said in the beginning, we were also interested in populist politics. So we did various projects in the last 10 years. But mainly we were focusing about the Syrian conflict in the last 10 years on different kind of levels. And one of the projects that you saw in Amman, it's called ground plan drawings. And basically we asked a group of Syrian refugees who left their homes in the last 6 years, 8 years, to participate in a workshop where we asked them to draw their houses that they left behind. We used the methodology of drawings to try to understand, or to visualize architecture as a kind of a silent witness of what actually those people went through, and what they really left behind, and what is actually their idea about home, and what kind of new future they think they want to build. It was, of course, an amazing journey, and we are collecting those drawings since 2014, and we kind of like use this methodology to also create a different understanding about what architecture could mean in such circumstances like conflict. We used also recorded interviews where we also interviewed refugees about how they survived actually a siege, or how they survived an attack, and how the complete function of the house completely changed during those times. So comparing comparing the functionality of a space before and after, or even during, that was really kind of an eye opener for us, but also using architecture as a time capsule to understand specific details, human behavior, how we think about future plans to rebuild those cities, what we keep, what we demolish, all those kind of like questions, they became on the table in such a project. So the project is still ongoing, and we would like to actually keep it as a kind of an archive. Like, yeah, we are also interested in creating those kind of alternative archive of and stories, and also for other people to join and maybe take a different angle on it. So that was a bit the project.
So it's using kind of the memory of the actual inhabitants, the way that the residents, the way they using insights from their actual insights from their memory to kind of try and rebuild and reconstruct the future in a way that is most loyal to kind of how their spaces used to be.
You can see it from different angles. So some of them, for example, who lived in refugee camps around, I don't know, Turkey or Jordan, they were facing this kind of policies about that if you live in those kind of tents or containers, you're not allowed to personalize it, or you're not allowed to change anything in it. So the whole kind of concept of where you're living now, so you start reflecting, or what is home for me? What can I make my own space, you know, like put your own or change it, or so. Those people, for example, they were reflecting on the idea of what kind of space they want, what kind of home they want to create in the end. Other people, they used it as a way to remember. Just like to go back in memory. So, for example, the video that we produced, it was really specifically talking about survival and how you use architecture to survive, to hide medicines, or to hide important documents, or to how to be safe in a way. But also, we also discovered that architecture is being also used as evidence in to verify your identity. So, for example, I don't know if you're familiar, when you go to Europe and you apply for an asylum, one of the methodology to verify your identity is to draw a plan or a map, or even a map of your house to prove actually that you've lived in this space. So actually, architecture become a piece of an evidence or verification mode that used by governments and institutions to verify your story, or as to piece
also,
the truth.
It definitely is also.
You're interested in that more than the
and definitely. So this is where architecture becomes political as well, especially now with what's happening in Syria, for example. I mean, the war. I think maybe from the 3rd or 4th year of the war, I started hearing already in Beirut about the reconstruction, and I couldn't understand how are we talking about reconstruction now, and war still is running, and still it's not over, and there's already a lot of like planning that has been done about the cities, how they want the cities to look like, which companies are going to contract, you know, how the reconstruction is planned for there. And the question was, have the communities that were living there been talked to, or been as well engaged in this process of reconstruction? So concerning Foundland, all this research that you do, so who can use it? Who can utilize it? How is it accessible? And is it also material? Is it that you use to teach students in universities and for the future?
Yeah, this is another point I want to talk about. We both involved in teaching, so we both teach. I teach in the American University in Cairo. Lauren teach in the Royal Academy in The Hague. So we use also, we are really good, big believers of education and involving students, and also like bringing those methodology and those ideas into education, especially in the region. So I can talk about like a really quick project I did with my students in Cairo. It's about a neighborhood in Maadi. And we did a workshop to reconnect the participants again with the neighborhoods, because I don't know if you're familiar with Cairo, people move with cars on bridges. They really like I kind of recognize with my young students that they really don't connect with neighborhood the way I used to connect with my neighborhood in Damascus, or how it's very difficult. The city is unfriendly even for pedestrians. Like, you know, it's very difficult to and this is why there is a lot of what's happening now in the city, that there is a lot of demolishment of neighborhoods, of old houses, and nobody is really doing something about it. Like some activists, they are busy with it, but the community is not really active about protecting those places.
They think the new is better. They think that
it's insignificant for them, which is really sad. So what we created a workshop where we invited different people who are familiar with the neighborhood, and we created a kind of unconventional tours. So one tour was about introducing the neighborhood's nature. So through explaining different kind of plants and trees that exist in the neighborhood, you can get introduced again to the neighborhood from a completely different perspective. Another expert, she was talking about myth and gossips and stories that happen through history, and how actually it shaped the idea and the identity of the neighborhood. So we create with students by walking and different kind of tours where they again reactivate their connection with the neighborhood, and you create a kind of like a valuable connection again. So their connection with an old building or a park, or because it has this story, because it has this connection again, it became very important to them. And I think this is very important in design education, that you try to publish or make public those kind of stories, so people can reconnect again and find it valuable, or valuable to, or worth to protect or to preserve. And yeah, so this is what my approach in education. So we did so many projects. Yeah. Of course, we are coming from a design background and design research, and we are not an architect, but at least we can work with urban planner, work with architects to reactivate this connection.
Yes, I think it's really beautiful, because we have 3 different perspectives, 3 different projects operating in 3 different cities, countries, and I'm starting to see. I mean, the whole point of this talk was to try and really learn about alternative approaches in doing architecture and design, and it's quite interesting that we've already pinpointed a lot of different processes that are non-traditional in a way. And this is what's really interesting from Ghalia's community engagement in the neighborhood, and Nihal's work on really observing how people are interacting, reshaping their own space and learning from that in the way they redesign architecture, to the approach of you summoning a lot of different stakeholders from different areas and expertise to come on solving a specific issue rather than having it one directional approach. Which brings me to kind of the final part of this talk, where what we really want to do is to get designers who are watching, students. We want to open their eyes on the possibilities of how they can work on their projects, do their research beyond the traditional way of doing it. So in this context, in this project, what do you think are the most important? And this is a question, I think it's for everyone that would like to hear from each one's perspective on it, but what are the tools that you think designers, architects, planners should adopt while trying to approach a specific problem or issue?
So for me, Ghassan, I believe maybe the first point is design with, not design for. So traditionally, we design for a client, a community, but really now the approach is design with, because I mean, we talked earlier about the idea of contextualize, about really, you know, recreating memory at some point. So really about involving the community or the end user in the process from the start. The second point that I would like to, in fact, it brings me back to a project I did 12 years ago. 12 years ago, I was just, I had just graduated from the College of Architecture in the US. And I did a project on labor housing. So basically, it was an issue, a social issue that I connected with. And back then, obviously, the main issue when it comes to, let's say, underprivileged communities was the labor community in the UAE or in the Gulf in particular. So I documented my visit. So I spoke to them, I did interviews, I did photographs, officially and unofficially, I must say, and just to kind of to capture that lifestyle, that essence. And my project ended up winning the Cityscape Architect of the Year in partnership with Miras. And really, I was a student, so I did not involve any policymakers. I did not involve any municipality. I did it on my own, based on my own observations. And I created a modular system where each unit defines the living space. So there could be no opportunity of abuse where you could, you know, stack many people in one room, you know, in a 4x4 or whatever. So this was kind of the approach. And then I started receiving calls about, you know, entities, official entities wanting to fund the project in the UAE and in Kuwait. Unfortunately, it was 2008 and it was the height of the financial crisis. So this was no longer the priority. But my advice, I think, would be is it has to be driven from you, driven from the student or from the designer itself, no longer waiting for policy to come from the top or from the authorities, but ensuring to have the legitimacy to have that voice, which comes from your tools, from your education, from your research, and so on. So really kind of trying to approach problem solving with that kind of approach. And finally, I would say maybe involving the right stakeholders to enrich where they can add value. Because the more you can add, you know, stakeholders with their knowledge, with their expertise, their know-how, their network, this can often facilitate you reaching your goals.
Great. Nihal, what would be the tools that you think working designers, graduating designers, and architects right now should use while thinking about their projects and their works?
Yeah, I was saying that first I wanna really say an interesting bond that we the three of us are having. It's about how we all want to kind of get involved in designing and producing and living, and it's the whole thing. Like we're not only working here. I think that all of us, we're not only working here, we're actually engaged in our work, in our studies, in our challenges, and we put ourselves in any challenge or any problem we want to solve as designers. But it's not only the designer who is solving it, it's also the human and the common interest as a public, the user, exactly, to is actually designing. And that's what May was saying, is we're not designing for, we're designing with, even with myself. Like I also like going actually to how I design architecture, or where I come from, or doing this crafting futures in refugees and in informal settlements in Lebanon. And me coming from there and understanding the lifestyle and the social behavior, and trying to solve my own problems and try to come up with scenarios for my own personal problems, and give these new narratives and new scenarios and inject them with the tools I learned from education, which is architecture and urban design. So doing this combination and experiment on my own life got me into something I couldn't imagine maybe before, and I couldn't reach it before. And really admiring the fact that Ghalia is talking about these narratives that of refugees coming from different places and trying to engage themselves or contextualize themselves in spaces by going to the memory or understanding the spaces they used to live in, and understand the social behavior of these spaces. So even like, for example, the dar is the common space in a Middle East house, like in Syria, in Palestine, in Lebanon, and this region. So this dar is a common space that anyone would be going to Europe will try to mimic in a way. So this for me is an existing, is a present foundation that can lead us into a future that I would call it sustainability. And how would the past act as a lesson to inform us how to use current methodologies? So that would be my insight.
Thank you. Okay, so Ghalia, also, I mean, what are the tools and approaches that you've already applied in your work and that you kind of recommend that your students or designers would actually use their work as well?
Well, I would not say tools so much, because I think now we are in a time that tools are available to everyone and it's very easy to learn. It's more the approach. And I would, again, in education, I will also like emphasize on something that Nihal said, that we have the power not only to visualize, but also speculate, like kind of project using like existing data and existing research now, and project on the future and create different scenarios where we give the public space to choose, to be a part of, to negotiate also the future. It's not only in the hand of policymakers, governments, but also the people, the community itself is kind of needs to be, needs to sit on the table and negotiate and also be part of those future plans. And I think this is really the time to do that. And I think the role of designer is to work together with the community and to empower communities to actually take the step and be part of the conversation. This is very important, especially in the region. Not react on what's really happening, but be involved from the beginning and build that. And I think designers, they need to understand their role. Their role is not only to visualize or to make possible or to work, but is to take the initiative and create and have the ideas, like, you know, like demand or claim more power and more involvement, like not with power, but more involvement. So this is very important. And it needs to come from the educational institutions, because this is where, you know, you empower those young students that you can do it. You need to widen your horizon, because this is also what, like, in the end, they think, okay, what I'm going to do after those 4 years of bachelor or master. So it's also the role of educators to widen the horizon of designers, that you can work in everywhere. You're needed. You are.
And hopefully this is basically what we're trying to do with this discussion as well, trying to widen the horizons. With this, I'm going to end this discussion today. I would like to thank each one of you for joining. Your very rich insights and experiences. I hope they will widen some of the horizons. And I also would like to, you know, also reiterate the point that designers have a role to demand a certain way of working. They also, you know, have the responsibility as well to kind of say we want to do things in this way because we believe it's the right way to do it. And designers have all the right tools to convince people with things. So I think they can do it, and they can provide the right arguments to do the right thing. Okay, so thank you, May. Thank you, Ghalia and Nihal, for joining. And
thank you, Hassan.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope to see you soon in person.
Yeah, we're actually also having this open house for part of Design Week. We're showing in progress, like, or in process in our office in Business Bay, so we can show this methodology with modeling, with animations, and with other tools.
Yeah, and they can check the program on Dubai Design Week's website for the full program. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Very nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you.